A round shape 60 meters wide sat far below the Baltic Sea, edges too straight for any normal rock. No scientists were looking for it, just a tired crew of treasure hunters heading home, sonar running on a final pass they almost skipped entirely. What that screen showed next never should have been there. The discovery happened on June 19, 2011. A Swedish group called Ocean X, led by Peter Lindberg and Dennis Asberg, was searching the Gulf of Bothnia, the northern arm of the Baltic Sea between Sweden and Finland. Ocean X were not scientists. They were commercial salvage hunters who made their living finding old shipwrecks and pulling up cargo, mostly bottles of alcohol and valuable metal. Years earlier, they had located the wreck of a schooner called the Jönköping, sunk by a German submarine in 1916. That find carried real value, since old bottles of alcohol from sunken ships can sell for large sums to collectors, and the discovery made Ocean X minor celebrities in Sweden. That reputation as skilled treasure hunters is exactly why people took the team seriously once they reported something new. These were not amateurs chasing rumors. They were professionals with a real track record of finding things nobody else could locate. While running a final sonar pass before heading home, their equipment picked up a large round shape on the seafloor. Nobody on board expected it. The team had spent 9 days finding nothing useful, and this last sweep changed everything. Once the sonar data came back, the team had to figure out exactly what their screen was actually showing them, and that image alone was strange enough to start a global story. The sonar picture was blurry and hard to read, but it showed a circular object roughly 60 meters across, sitting at a depth of about 91 meters, close to 300 feet down. Straight lines ran along parts of the shape, almost like corridors. Sections looked like steps, each about 1 meter tall, similar to a staircase. Near the top sat 2 holes, one small and one much larger, with something like a square frame built around the bigger opening. Behind the main shape was a long, flattened track cut into the seabed, stretching close to 300 meters. Some team members thought it looked like a runway, as if something heavy had slid across the bottom before coming to rest. Online, people quickly compared the shape to the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars, and that comparison stuck everywhere the story spread. The nickname spread so widely that even people who never followed ocean mysteries had heard the object described that way at least once. That single sonar image was the only hard evidence anyone had. Before scientists could properly study it, tabloid papers had already grabbed the story and run far ahead with it. Once photos of the sonar image went public, coverage exploded. In 2012, the Daily Mail ran a story that pushed the tale into headlines around the world. Some articles suggested the object could be the lost city of Atlantis. Others guessed it was a hidden Nazi base left over from World War II, since the region had been fought over heavily during that war to protect shipping routes carrying iron ore. A few even floated the idea of a secret Cold War submarine station built into the seafloor. None of these ideas had any real evidence behind them. They were guesses stacked on top of one blurry image and a public that badly wanted an exciting answer. Scientists at the time had barely looked at the site, and most of the wildest theories came from newspaper writers rather than anyone who had actually studied the object. Getting real answers meant somebody had to go back down there and collect actual proof instead of guessing from a distance, and that return trip took far longer than anyone expected. Ocean X did not have the money to head straight back to the site. Lining up proper funding took close to a year. Lindbergh later said publicly that finding organizations willing to sponsor a proper investigation was one of the hardest parts of the whole project, since most institutions did not want to attach their name to something the public already treated like a joke. Eventually, the team secured sponsors and a documentary partnership, and in the summer of 2012, they sailed out again, this time planning to dive closer, gather rock samples, and try to settle the question for good. Strong currents and poor visibility made the dive difficult from the start. Getting close enough to the object to collect anything useful took real effort, and the team could not simply swim up and grab samples the way they had hoped. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Once the boat reached the site and divers went down, the trip produced something nobody had reported the first time around, and it had nothing to do with rocks or shapes on a screen. During the 2012 dives, team members reported that electronic gear kept failing near the object. Diver Stefan Hogborn described cameras and a satellite phone shutting off completely whenever the boat sat directly above the site. He said the equipment came back to life once they moved roughly 200 meters away, then died again as soon as they returned. Skeptics pointed out plenty of boring reasons equipment can fail at sea. Saltwater exposure, loose wiring, cold temperatures, and cheap batteries can all knock out cameras and phones without any strange force involved. No independent lab ever confirmed anything beyond normal gear trouble. Still, the claim spread across news outlets everywhere, and it became one of the most repeated parts of the entire story. Reporters who covered the story at the time noted how convenient the timing looked, since the failures happened only when the team was trying to gather the exact proof skeptics were demanding. That timing made some journalists openly question how reliable the whole account really was. What made the claim stick in people's minds was not the equipment itself. It was who was making the claim, and that person had spent years telling everyone else these kinds of stories were nonsense. Peter Lindbergh had built a reputation as the most doubtful person on his own team. He said directly that he had been the biggest skeptic of UFO stories and strange ocean tales in general, long before this expedition. Yet even he admitted the equipment failures were something he could not fully explain, saying the team had experienced things he genuinely had not expected going in. That kind of statement from a longtime skeptic carried weight, with the public in a way a wild claim from a stranger never could. News outlets leaned heavily on Lindbergh's change in tone, since a professional who once dismissed these theories, now sounding uncertain, made for a far more compelling story than another anonymous claim. It also meant Ocean X kept the story alive even as pressure grew for them to produce something more solid than sonar images and broken cameras. The rocks the team finally managed to pull up from the site were about to answer that pressure directly, whether the answer helped their case or not. Samples collected during the 2012 dives were sent to Volker Bruckert, a geologist at Stockholm University. His results were far less exciting than headlines wanted. Most of the samples turned out to be granite, gneiss, and sandstone, common rock types found throughout the northern Baltic region. One sample stood out as a loose piece of basalt, rock formed from cooled lava, unusual for a spot with no volcanoes nearby. Bruckert explained this was not as strange as it sounded. The entire northern Baltic region had been shaped heavily by melting glaciers thousands of years ago, and both the rocks and the odd-shaped feature itself likely formed through that same glacial and post-glacial process. Ice sheets are known to carry rocks like basalt for long distances before dropping them somewhere far from where they started, a process geologists call glacial transport. And it happens across glacial regions all over the world, not just in the Baltic. Other Swedish geologists who reviewed the case pointed out that some minerals found near the site, including limonite and goethite, form naturally on ocean floors without needing any unusual explanation at all. Bruckert's findings should have settled the debate right there. But before that conclusion could fully take hold, a completely separate group of experts raised doubts about something even more basic than the rocks themselves. Marine geologist Dan Fornari of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution reviewed the original sonar picture and said it contained numerous artifacts that made it difficult to interpret properly. He argued nobody should place much confidence in any reading of the image until better processing was done and full details about the sonar equipment were provided. Sonar expert Hanumant Singh also connected to Woods Hole, raised similar concerns, pointing out that distortions in the picture made it unreliable, and suggesting the equipment used to capture it may have been poorly calibrated. Both experts made clear that a single low-quality image, taken once and never independently reshot with better gear, was never enough on its own to support any firm conclusion in either direction. Swedish geologists Fredrik Klingberg and Martin Jakobsen later added their own review, noting that the chemical makeup of the samples resembled ordinary seafloor material rather than anything manufactured. With both the rocks and the image itself facing serious scientific doubt, Ocean X faced a growing problem. Getting a clear answer would require far more equipment, funding, and expert time than anyone outside the team seemed willing to provide. Mainstream scientific institutions showed little interest in funding a deeper investigation of what most experts already viewed as a likely glacial deposit. Serious underwater research at that depth requires expensive equipment, dedicated ships, trained diving teams, and lab time, and universities generally reserve that kind of budget for projects with stronger scientific backing. Ocean X, meanwhile, remained a small commercial outfit whose main business was finding shipwrecks, not solving geology puzzles. Their earlier expeditions had only been possible through sponsorships and a documentary deal, and once media attention cooled off, that kind of funding became harder to find. A 2016 documentary called Baltic Sea Anomaly, The Unsolved Mystery, covered the story in full, giving Lindbergh and the team one more chance to lay out their case publicly, but no major scientific expedition to the site has followed since that film came out. That left the object sitting in a strange kind of limbo, too expensive for a small team to fully investigate, and too far outside mainstream priorities for a university or research institute to take on as a serious project. Every piece of hard evidence collected from the Baltic Sea Anomaly points toward a natural explanation. The rocks matched glacial deposits found throughout the region. The strange shape sits in an area heavily reshaped by ice sheets during the last ice age. Experts who reviewed the original sonar image raised real doubts about how reliable it even was in the first place. None of that stopped the story from spreading, and none of it fully explained the equipment failures divers described while working directly above the site. Those claims were never independently confirmed, but they were never disproven either, since nobody with proper scientific resources ever went back to test them directly. What remains today is a single blurry sonar image, a handful of ordinary rocks, and a team of treasure hunters who never got the funding to finish what they started. The most likely answer has been sitting in a geology report since 2012. Whether that answer satisfies everyone who first saw that sonar screen light up is a different question entirely. If this kind of deep ocean mystery is your thing, subscribing helps more of these stories reach you the moment they come out.